Now, a word to our audience. Even though we're being broadcast on Fox, there's no need for obnoxious hooting and hollering.
For more than 3 decades, The Simpsons has joked about everything, from politics to pop culture to the network that airs it. But every now and then, an episode sparks a different kind of buzz, the kind that makes people wonder if Fox got a little too nervous. Fans point to certain stories, missing reruns and quiet edits, and say, something's up. So what was inside the episode people swear Fox never wanted you to see? What really happened behind the scenes? When talking about the episode Fox supposedly tried to stop, they are usually referring to a group of episodes that pushed the network far outside its comfort zone. And while none were officially banned before airing, several went through heavy executive scrutiny, sudden rewrites, legal review, and nervous meetings where the network questioned whether they should ever reach the public. What makes this story so fascinating is not some lost secret tape. It's how a comedy show managed to make one of the biggest television networks in America sweat. Inside the writer's room, pushing boundaries was just part of the job. The early seasons of The Simpsons already walked a fine line. They mocked American culture, politics, schools, religion, big corporations, even Fox itself. At first, this rebellious tone was exactly what made the show stand out. But as the series exploded in popularity, executives grew more protective. Suddenly, jokes that seemed harmless when ratings were average felt more dangerous when 20 million people were watching on a Sunday night, and so began the tug-of-war between the creatives who wanted honesty and satire, and the executives who wanted safety. The tension became clearer when writers developed episodes that targeted real institutions. Anytime an episode joked directly about FOX, criticized corporate decisions, or took jabs at media companies, phones started ringing. The network's standards department, people whose job was to keep the show safe, would go through every line of the script. Jokes that seemed too sharp were highlighted. Scenes were flagged for review. Sometimes the writers pushed back and won. Sometimes they were forced to rewrite entire sequences hours before animation deadlines. One of the most well-known examples of pushback involved episodes that portrayed Fox as greedy, incompetent, or corrupt. The show loved using fictional executives who resembled real corporate figures, and these portrayals often made executives uncomfortable. According to interviews with former writers, jokes about the network itself caused more arguments than jokes about politicians or celebrities. That tells you something about how sensitive the company was about its public image. When a script featured a storyline that leaned too hard into media power or corporate mismanagement, executives occasionally asked whether airing it was a good idea right now. Those words rarely meant don't air it, but they always meant change it. There were also episodes tied to real-world events that raised internal alarms. After major national incidents, Fox reviewed certain scripts more carefully, worrying that satire might appear insensitive. This happened with episodes referencing government failures, financial scandals, and big historical tragedies. While the writers insisted satire must challenge the uncomfortable, the network saw potential backlash. Several episodes went through delayed production, last-minute edits, or tightened storylines to avoid explosive reactions. Another source of tension came from episodes that targeted powerful people outside Fox, politicians, wealthy public figures, and companies with gigantic legal teams. Whenever the writers included a joke that came close to accusing someone of wrongdoing, the legal department reviewed it line by line. Sometimes they suggested softening a phrase. Other times they recommended changing the name entirely. These weren't dramatic censorship moments, but they were real examples of how corporate caution shaped what the audience eventually saw. What really made this almost blocked episode stand out, however, was the atmosphere around it. Writers have said that the room felt different, more careful, but also more rebellious. People knew the script pushed limits, but they also believed the story deserved to be told exactly as written. At one point, the notes coming from Fox reportedly grew so frequent, the writers joked that executives wanted to co-write the episode themselves. It wasn't hostile, just tense. two sides trying to protect two different things: creativity on one hand, corporate interests on the other. During table reads, where the cast performs the script aloud, executives listened closely. If lines that mocked Fox or touched sensitive topics got the biggest laughs from the writers, executives sometimes cringed. Afterward, they would request meetings. The writers would argue that satire meant nothing if it avoided every uncomfortable topic. Executives countered with concerns about sponsors, public relations, or potential backlash. This back and forth was normal, but for this particular script, it stretched far longer than usual. By the time animation began, the episode had gone through more revisions than most. Some jokes were toned down, but many survived simply because the writers fought for them. And when it finally aired, the reaction was immediate. Fans loved how bold it felt. Some critics praised the show for refusing to soften its satire. Others wondered whether Fox regretted letting it pass. Internally, executives reportedly breathed a sigh of relief when the public response was positive, confirming that the risk had been worth it. Looking back, what makes this story interesting isn't a secret ban or hidden episode. It's how fragile the balance between creativity and corporate caution can be. The Simpsons became the show. It is because its writers challenged everything, including the network that paid them. And FOX, for all its hesitation, ultimately let them push those boundaries again and again. This almost blocked episode simply became the symbol of a long, complicated dance between a fearless creative team and a company constantly worried about what could go wrong. The episode didn't disappear. It wasn't buried or lost. Instead, it became part of the legacy that defines The Simpsons, a show unafraid to take risks, even when the people in the boardroom were sweating. But which specific episodes really made FOX executives sweat? And why did these stories almost spark a network panic? The real episodes Fox worried about and why they mattered. If you want to understand why people still talk about episodes being blocked by Fox, you have to look at the real moments when the network genuinely hesitated. These weren't dramatic shutdowns or secret bans, but they were episodes that triggered long email chains, tense meetings, nervous legal reviews, and moments where the writers' room wondered whether they had finally gone too far.
Now, in conclusion, my administration will focus on the 3 R's: reading, writing, and refilling the ocean.
What makes these cases stand out is that they show exactly how vulnerable a giant network becomes when a cartoon turns its lens toward the real world. One of the earliest examples came with Stark Raving Dad in 1991. The episode featured Michael Jackson, uncredited but unmistakably involved.
If you're really Michael Jackson, who are your last 4 dates for the Grammys?
Fox worried not about the story, but about the public spotlight. Anything involving a star of Jackson's size meant risk. If the episode worked, they would claim the win. If it backfired, the backlash would land directly on the network. In the end, it aired and became iconic. But behind the scenes, lawyers examined every line. Producers have said that this was one of the first times Fox realized The Simpsons wasn't just a quirky sitcom anymore, it was a cultural force. Then came episodes that targeted the network itself. The Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie Show, 1997, remains a prime example. While Fox didn't block it, the satire was sharp enough that executives reportedly felt personally attacked. The episode mocked studio interference, corporate-driven character additions, and audience manipulation. All things executives recognized uncomfortably well. Writers later joked that this was the rare episode where the real-life critiques landed harder than any cartoon violence. For viewers, it was hilarious. For Fox, it was too close to home. Another major flashpoint was The Cartridge Family, 1997. The episode centered around gun ownership. At the time, gun violence was a politically heated topic in America, and Fox worried it might ignite controversy they weren't prepared to handle. Executives questioned whether the humor crossed a line, whether advocacy groups would react, and whether the timing was appropriate. The episode survived, but only after careful editing and heated internal debate. Later, showrunner Bill Oakley confirmed that the network's anxiety during this one was very real. A more direct clash happened when the writers created episodes openly mocking Fox News. In Fox-E-Lady, 2009, the show portrayed the news division as intentionally misleading and heavily biased. This pushed FOX executives into an awkward position. The same umbrella corporation owned both The Simpsons and FOX News. Writers later revealed that the network issued notes expressing discomfort, but ultimately allowed the episode to air. The result was a cultural moment, one that proved the show was willing to poke not just the bear, but the one feeding it. The most intense pushback, however, came with episodes that touched legal nerves. Anytime a script referenced real companies, political groups, or celebrities, the legal department combed through it line by line. Bart Mangled Banner, 2004, which tackled patriotism, war, and media hysteria, triggered a review long enough that the writers joked someone could have animated a second episode. In that time, Fox worried that the satire might be interpreted as anti-American, especially during a politically sensitive era, but the writers stood firm. Satire isn't meant to flatter, it's meant to challenge. What makes all these cases important is that they highlight exactly why a myth formed around the idea of a forbidden Simpsons episode. The show walked a cultural tightrope. It wasn't reckless or provocative for the sake of it, but it wasn't afraid of discomfort either. The truth is far more interesting than a fictional banned episode. Fox repeatedly found itself unsure whether the show's honesty would help or hurt them. The tension didn't come from censorship. It came from the constant friction between a network that wanted safety and a writing team that wanted truth. And through every argument, every nervous meeting, and every late-night rewrite, the same pattern continued. The writers pushed, executives hesitated, and somehow the episodes always made it to air. This long history of discomfort is what fuels the legend, because even without a literal blocked episode, the battles behind the scenes were very real. Which single episode fueled the legend of a forbidden Simpsons story, and what really happened behind the scenes? The episode that sparked the rumor. If one episode deserves credit for fueling the legend of a forbidden Simpsons episode, it isn't necessarily the ones that directly mocked Fox or stirred controversy. It's the one that vanished quietly from circulation years later, leaving fans asking questions. That episode was Stark Raving Dad, the Season 3 story featuring Michael Jackson. While it aired without incident in 1991, its disappearance decades later created the perfect storm for speculation. People assumed the network had tried to block it from the start. The truth is more nuanced and more revealing about the dynamics between creators, fans, and corporate responsibility. The episode's premise was simple. Homer is sent to a mental institution where he meets a gentle giant claiming to be Michael Jackson. The story is humorous, heartwarming, and typical of early Simpsons charm. Jackson provided the voice, uncredited, and the show benefited from both the humor and the celebrity allure. But when Jackson's past controversies resurfaced publicly,
Michael Jackson.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Well, have you heard of MTV?
Nope.
Motown?
No.
Beat It.
You beat it!
the creators decided it was no longer appropriate to keep the episode in circulation. Streaming platforms, DVD collections, and reruns quietly removed it, creating the impression that Fox had blocked it. Fans, however, weren't aware of the real reason. The combination of nostalgia and mystery turned the episode into something of a forbidden fruit. This quiet removal was different from earlier cases where the network expressed discomfort before airing. It happened years after the fact, which added a layer of intrigue. The episode became an object of obsession. Screenshots circulated, clips were shared, and rumors ballooned online. Conspiracy threads suggested Fox had tried to hide the episode all along, reinforcing the idea of a secret corporate decision. In reality, the removal was proactive on the part of the creators, not a preemptive network action. Yet what's fascinating is how this incident highlights the way fan perception and corporate action can collide. When an episode disappears, regardless of the reason, viewers naturally assume something controversial is buried inside. Add decades of fandom, social media discussions, and clickbait headlines, and the story grows into a legend. People scrutinize every frame, every line, every background detail, trying to find clues about what Fox didn't want you to see. The episode, which was never controversial at the time of airing, became a symbol of hidden secrets, simply because it was no longer readily available. Stark Raving Dad also demonstrates the lasting power of nostalgia. Fans remember it fondly and interpret its removal as evidence of censorship. They analyze reruns, reference interviews, and debate on forums. This creates an environment where even minor network interventions, such as reviewing scripts or issuing notes, feel like heavy-handed suppression. The episode's later disappearance retroactively validates those feelings. What was once a fun story became a cultural artifact of myth, illustrating how perception often outweighs fact when it comes to television legends. Beyond the removal itself, the episode's reputation also ties into broader discussions about accountability and ethics. The creator's decision to remove it highlights an awareness of public responsibility, an acknowledgement that cultural tastes and sensitivities evolve over time. Fox, meanwhile, remained in the background, allowing the creators to take the lead. But fans rarely make this distinction. The network's name is attached to the episode's disappearance, cementing its role in the rumor. The gap between reality and perception is the very thing that keeps people talking decades later. What's particularly interesting about this episode is how it intersects with fan curiosity about other hidden content. As people speculate about lost scripts, unaired jokes, or excised lines, the episode becomes a reference point. It is a cautionary tale about how legends form in fan communities. A vanished episode plus an engaged fan base equals a myth. And yet, when you finally watch it, it's simply a standard Simpsons story. Funny, charming, and completely accessible. The hidden danger exists only in the lore, not in the content. In the end, this is the episode that made the phrase, "Fox tried to stop this," stick in people's minds. It was never literally blocked, never banned, and never deemed too risky to air. The drama exists in the perception of fans and the cultural conversation that surrounds The Simpsons. The lesson is clear. Sometimes a quiet decision, removing a beloved episode decades later, can spark more intrigue than any overt controversy ever could. It is a reminder that behind every forbidden episode, there is usually a story of timing, perception, and human judgment, rather than outright censorship. So how did a few edits and missing episodes turn into full-blown legends online? How legends grow. Once an episode disappears even temporarily, curiosity explodes. In the case of The Simpsons,
Homer Simpson, you've just won the employee raffle!
The internet has become a breeding ground for myths, exaggerations, and wild theories about what Fox supposedly tried to hide. Fans pore over every screenshot, every background prop, and every line of dialogue, searching for proof that the network intervened. Even harmless edits or routine content adjustments are transformed into evidence of a grand conspiracy. A removed episode isn't just gone. It becomes a mystery begging to be solved. The mythology around forbidden episodes thrives because of the show's long history of satire. The Simpsons has never shied away from poking fun at powerful corporations, political figures, or social institutions. That willingness to take risks creates fertile ground for speculation. When Fox shows even mild discomfort, like requesting a joke be toned down, fans amplify it, imagining secret meetings, clandestine memos, and executive panic. It's storytelling at its finest, real events magnified by imagination. Some fan theories even connect unrelated events. One episode's temporary removal, combined with interviews, behind-the-scenes stories, and social media chatter, becomes the basis for elaborate claims. People discuss hidden messages, secret symbolism, and unspoken censorship as if it were a detective novel. These myths are reinforced by forums, YouTube videos, and podcasts where every claim is dissected. and reinterpreted. In a way, the legend of Fox trying to block The Simpsons exists less in fact and more in collective fascination. And yet, there's a charm to it. These myths keep the show alive beyond its episodes. They encourage new fans to dig into old seasons, to watch and rewatch, and to appreciate the craft behind each joke. They turn ordinary corporate decisions into stories of intrigue and creativity, highlighting the blurred line between reality and legend in popular culture. At the end of the day, Fox never actually tried to shut down the episodes people remember most. What happened instead was a combination of routine network caution, creator discretion, and fan imagination. And that, perhaps, is exactly why the story of the forbidden episode continues to captivate audiences decades later. The episode may have aired, disappeared, or reappeared, but the legend itself, that's forever. The story of Fox and The Simpsons shows how creativity, corporate caution, and fan imagination collide. No episode was truly banned, yet the myths live on. It's a reminder that sometimes the legends behind the screen are just as entertaining as the episodes themselves. Subscribe for more stories like this and leave your comments in the section below.